There we
There
go.
we go.
All right, so it's 2:05. Let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Sorry for the little technical glitch there. I just want to give a couple of minutes of kind of explanation. What is a marketing strategy and sales development guy doing interviewing Andy McCabe, the Restoration Rebel leader, so that there's a context to this and so that there's a certain amount of transparency. I always feel like everybody's got an angle. And so it's good to be as upfront about your angle as you can. And BDA, my company, we work exclusively with restoration contractors around the country. And if I do say so myself, I think we're the foremost sales development and marketing strategy experts in the restoration industry. And we've helped our clients to generate more than $100 million in new direct business outside of TPAs and program work.
Nice.
And so we get hired because companies aren't growing or they want to grow faster, or they hire business development people that fail or aren't bringing in enough business. But I think where the connection is between BDA and the Rebels is our clients are very concerned about how dependent they are on TPAs, weather, and luck, and they want to drive the growth of their own business. So this probably sounds very familiar to many of you that are Rebels. I'm going to give an exclusive free bonus at the end for those of you that want to look into developing cutting-edge marketing strategies, some free information that you can't get anywhere else. So I think that fundamentally we would all agree that we're in a time of great change. The challenging part about this is we don't know exactly what that change is going to look like. And so, but what we do know is there is a massive downward pressure on margins, prices and margins. We do know that there is a strong movement on the carrier, from the carriers to go to managed repair programs, otherwise known as TPAs. We know that TPAs will squeeze a quarter until it screams. We know that there are many new competitors coming into the market continually. And also, I work very closely with my clients, and one of the things that you see every day is restorers dealing with unscrupulous, flat out, bad faith, and quite frankly, illegal behavior on the part of the insurance adjusting industry. And it's extraordinarily frustrating for me in support of my clients, but of course even more so for them who are trying to really do the best possible job they can and are faced with all of a sudden having to jump through many, many hoops to get paid a fair price. So I think what we find ourselves in our industry is that our industry has gone from the emerging phase through the growth phase, and we're now in a maturing phase. And what I'm describing is pretty common in maturing industries. And if it makes you feel any better, 80% of American industries are in that same maturing phase, but this is a situation of overcapacity, downward price pressure, therefore downward margin pressure, increased service expectations. So it's a very challenging environment, and we don't really know how technology like artificial intelligence is going to play out yet, although it's certainly going to play out. So, I've been waiting for years to see what was going to happen because there's got to be a pushback at some point, right? And something that I was very excited to see is I started seeing Andy's stuff in social media, started reading and listening to some of his videos, and I'm like, okay, this looks like that challenge to the status quo that I was expecting would arise. Now, I'm not saying that the Rebel approach, if there is such a thing as a Rebel approach, is for everybody. But I think that all successful restorers embody some elements of what I see on the Rebel website and other areas where I'm able to access that material. And I think it's very, very important that all restorers are aware of this movement, because I think this movement is critically important because we have been a fragmented, disjointed, powerless industry for the most part forever. We're going up against massive, big dogs, okay? So having said that, let's get the interview started. I've got a ton of questions for Andy, and we'll take questions as time allows. If you've got questions, just go ahead and type them into the dashboard. And Andy, let's get the webcams going.
Let's do it.
I'm going to shut this thing down.
Boom. You have much better lighting than I do.
Oh, I see that now. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So, Andy, what's a restoration rebel anyway?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't know what it was until I just made it up about December last year or 2016. But it comes down to someone who is a professional in the industry, who loves what they do, and is just sick and tired of being pushed around. Sick and tired of other people saying, hey, I don't know how to do your job, but I'm pretty sure my book says you're doing it wrong. And I've been in this game for a long time, and I've seen the good and the bad and a lot of the ugly. And I got to the point of my career where I really didn't owe it to anybody to play along anymore. I got to this point where I have the political freedom, if you will, that allows me to say what everyone wants to say anyway. And so I just started doing it. I started saying, this is crap, and this is crap. That's horse shit. And the big players and the big TPAs and the people that get most of their work out of TPAs and stuff like that, they can't say those things because they're dangerous. So I decided, in a moment of weakness or clarity or whatever you want to call it, to give it a name and say, you know what? If you're sick and tired of where this industry is going, if you love this industry like I do, get on board. Let's see where we can take this.
Now, it's very exciting. But for those of you that don't know you, can you give us a brief understanding of your role in the industry and how that led to the Rebels coming about?
Sure. I started way back when I was a donut dropper. I worked for a company called Dow Columbia, and back then you could actually get some good leverage, good business from going to agents. And so that's what I was. I had a marketing degree and I needed a marketing job. So I got a marketer's job at a company called Dow Columbia in Portland, Oregon, 1998. And that's really my first foray into the quietest $300 billion industry we've never heard of, of restoration. I didn't know this. There was people that specialized in this and did just exclusively insurance repairs. I'd never had a major loss in my life. So like the majority of the population, I think, of the United States, they don't know we exist. So if they don't know we exist, how important are we to their daily lives? We think we're pretty darn important, but so I went from, once they figured out that I was all right in front of a computer and had half a brain, they put me into Xactimate, and I started running water damage losses, and I was a water damage technician. Then I go through the ASCR training of the WRT, the ASD, the mold and CRT and all this other stuff. So I came up through the ASCR program, now RIA. Then I started switching jobs and ended up with a couple Service Master franchises, so which means I had to retake all my training again through the IICRC's lens of the world. And got to the point 5 years ago where, not to get too personal, but I had thoroughly screwed up my professional life with some personal problems that I brought onto myself, and I was unhireable. So when you reach the point when you're unhireable, you gotta start thinking outside the box. So I said, well, I'm pretty good at Xactimate, so why don't I just write Xactimate estimates for folks? And 5 years ago, there was no one doing that, and everyone I talked to about it said, you're stupid, you're crazy. But now it's a burgeoning industry. There's a lot of specialists that's all they do is write Xactimate estimates for people across the country, and it's a real thing. So through that, I went and got my adjuster's license. So I'm a consultant and an adjuster, and I just got the unique perspective on things because I can go in and write a sheet for Nationwide Insurance, and if I'm the contractor writing that very same sheet, I'm going to get treated very differently from Nationwide Insurance. Very eye-opening. So through the last couple of years, I started doing more and more actual adjusting, not PA work, adjusting and appraising. And that really clarified in my mind, there's a lot of things that are wrong with this industry. There's a lot of things that can be done better and differently. And there's a lot of pain. And that's what it comes down to. People are going out of business every day. And I worked for two contractors that don't exist anymore because their AR got so high and they got strung out so long on claims that they couldn't afford it anymore and they went bankrupt. That's a problem. Why does that happen? This is the only industry it happens in. You don't see doctors going out of business because they're owed money, right? You don't see GCs going out of business because they did $40 million worth of work they hadn't been paid on. Why does it happen to us? Well, we got to start asking these hard questions. So that's really what it comes down to.
Okay. I mean, I've had the same experience with clients who got the phone call and 80% of their business was vaporized
overnight
on that phone call, and really through no fault of their own. So then that's part of the reason why I was so excited really to see this movement coming. And I want to make sure, because as we get into this conversation, we're going to probably, really get cooking. I want to make sure that people that don't know you understand you've written some books. You write estimates for a living. That's your primary business.
Yep.
I notice you do some residential or retail, I guess, consulting for policyholders also.
That's true.
Which really informs your perspective. And you do podcasts. You've got a really thriving Facebook page, and so on. So just so everybody knows, Andy is a resource in the industry. We just want to help him make a living, as well as being the free leader of the Rebel movement.
I appreciate that. There's claims delegates. That's claimsdelegates.com. You go there and check it out. I write Xactimate estimates. But I hope we get to the point in this conversation where we talk about the fact that I think claims delegates and Xactimate writers are an endangered species. But we can touch on that when we get to it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So, we've talked a little bit about the problems in the industry, the things that are wrong. From your perspective, why the Rebels? What's the goal? What are you trying to achieve?
Ultimately, I'll know that our goal is achieved when we are able to go into have a claims experience that actually reaffirms my belief and faith in humanity. I listened to a wonderful podcast interview with the CEO of Lemonade Insurance. And if y'all aren't paying attention to Lemonade Insurance and these virtual carriers, you need to get on board. You need to start looking at these things. What I loved about this podcast is this guy was speaking my language. He was saying everything I've been saying for years. He had more credibility because he's $120 million worth of VC funding. So they're going to listen to him before they're going to listen to me. But he said something. He said, when we set out to do this, create an insurance company, we had to start from scratch, because there's a point where you cannot change the old design enough to make it relevant in the new world. And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, if you had a goal of creating a system that would bring out the worst in humanity, it would look a lot like an insurance company. Those are not my words. They could have been my words, because I've said that in a different way, but these are coming from a CEO of probably the most disruptive insurance company we've ever seen. So they look at things very differently. They're coming at this market very differently. And that is a scary thing if you are part of the old guard. If you're an old school restoration contractor doing things the way they've always been done, you're dog meat. You're dead meat. You're endangered species. And I would recommend anyone that hasn't read The Innovator's Solution or The Innovator's Dilemma also pick up The Innovator's Prescription. And the biggest part of the Restoration Rebels is enabling our contractor members to survive and thrive in the next version of the restoration industry that we're going to come into. And it's going to be a scary new world. And just like you're fully aware, Tim, we've got to find ways to get the work ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Lemonade, I've seen their advertising here I'm in the Chicago market, and I've started to see they're on TV at this point, and I'm very curious. I've got to listen to that podcast myself because absolutely, you talk about an ossified industry and one that does bring out the worst of humanity. I think that is, in many ways, the insurance industry. So it's exciting in a way also to see there's a possibility for change.
And the other thing he said, which was, I think it bears repeating, is he said, no matter if you could change the players around, all right,
Mm-hmm.
you've got an industry that people love to hate, right? No one likes insurance. Even people that have insurance don't like insurance. You change the policyholder and the insurance company and the contractor, you just change the seats, you're going to have the same outcome.
Mm.
So it's a poor design. It incentivizes people to play shell games and hide money and lie,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it came down for me professionally. I was sick and tired of lying to everyone I was talking to every day. Yeah, a man can't have more than one master, even though that's the old. I mean, how many times did we hear this at the RIA summit in Nashville last year? We heard, oh, well, we have three customers. I have my boss, I have the insurance company adjuster, and then I have the client. Well, it's not physically possible. We're lying to ourselves if we think we can serve more than one master at a time.
That's very true. So you're the rebel leader. Is there a formal leadership structure of some kind?
Not really. No. Maybe it's because I'm too rebellious. We are new-ish, and we have a lot of people giving us really good advice and saying you should form a 401c3, you should have a board of directors, and I'm of two minds of it, and my rebel mind keeps coming out and saying, well, that's the way it's always been done. Mm-hmm. We have organizations that were built like that. We have existing organizations that we're all part of. How effective are those organizations? How quickly can those organizations react and adapt to market realities and market changes? Another great book. I got all my visuals out here for you today. But there's an article that's going to come out in R&R Magazine in February, I believe, that I wrote, and I touch on this current state of association. So this Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, he goes into talks about the degradation and downfall of associations nationwide, not just everything. Membership in extracurricular associations have declined precipitously over the last couple decades, and we've had a culture shift with the internet and everything else that the things that we used to belong to associations for, we used to go to these lunches once a month, right? We used to go to these golf tournaments. The reasons we went to these things don't exist anymore, or we're solving those needs in a different way, and our associations have become incredibly irrelevant. And if you're not relevant, you're dead. So back to are we going to be an official organized thing with a president and a vice president and a secretary and committees? I'm very anti-committee because I'm very pro-relevance. If we can stay relevant and provide value, which right now we're providing an incredible amount of value for free, then that's what it's about. If I can continue, I had another text message from somebody that found the YouTube channel and said, how do I join this movement? If I continue to get 1 or 2 or 10 of those a day, then that means we're going down the right track, and I don't need to be the president of a nonprofit organization. We can still, you look at the logos behind it. We can use these logos. You don't have to pay me $150 a year to use my logo, right? You don't have to have this official big organization in order to be a part of a movement. And look at, I don't want to be over dramatic, but how many people were a part of an association that were on the Million Man March? Listen to Dr. King. Did they have a membership fee? No, they believed what he believed, and they showed up. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot what we believe. We're here. If you believe what we believe, come join us. If you don't,
it's like the women's marches at the beginning of the year. Similar, yeah. I like the way it feels. I like the sort of the organic nature, and you can see that some people step up and take leadership where it's needed, and that there's something refreshing about that.
Exactly. Plus, we're just, it's hard to target something that you can't put a finger on, right?
Well, there is that. So how many rebels are there at this point?
Well, the Facebook group is sitting about 1,400.
Wow.
I've got my suspicions about how many of those people are true rebels and how many of those people are just lurking. And I get feedback. We're watching you. We're watching you too. I get feedback from other channels like, oh, you shouldn't have said that. And well, yeah, well, it's a free world and it's a free Facebook group too. So I'm going to say whatever I damn well please.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so that's a good size. I mean, regardless of the lurkers, that's quite a number of people coming together in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
Now I know it's pretty organic and it's pretty free form, but you do talk about 4 agreements.
Yes,
that
I do.
Seems to be more or less a code, if you will.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the 4 agreements are?
Yeah. If you're going to have anything that lasts, anything that's built to last, another great book, if you want to read it, Built to Last, it needs to be built on something. You need to have a good foundation. And so the 4 agreements, we're calling them the Rebel Rules now because we're like that. They set the foundation, they set the mindset, and they go to really what I believe it takes to be a successful restorer in this brave new world we're coming into. I can bring it up. Excuse me, right here. Can I share the screen? Should I do that?
Should be able to. You could do that.
Screen.
Sure. You can. Okay, hang on.
That's not the end of the world. I can read it.
I'll make you the presenter.
Look at that. Show my screen. Show my screen. Are we seeing it?
Not yet.
Oh,
there we go.
There we go. Okay. Well, I'm going to bring this down here too, because that might be relevant here in a second. Okay, so rule number 1, I will protect the value of my services. I will never provide free services, as these only serve to erode the value of a contractor's services industry-wide. How many times has your bill or your estimate been undercut by an adjuster saying, well, I know somebody will do it for less? And that somebody comes in and writes an estimate for free with no intention of doing the work. What validity does that have except for just letting the adjuster run the show and undercut somebody?
Right.
So we need to stop doing that. As an industry, we need to stop giving away free services. I charge to write estimates, and someone's come in and write an estimate for free. That degrades the value of everything we're doing. So stop giving away free stuff, not just estimates, but everything. If we're giving it away, we're taking the value away from everyone else. I will practice incredible transparency in my communications. I will explain our processes and details to my client. I will never hide details or manipulate reports. I will never communicate with a third party without also communicating with my client. We're not talking about revolutionary stuff. We're talking about honesty. We're talking about treating people like people. We're talking about putting the client at the center of our world. And for years and years, I used this report, right? Xactimate has this report. You guys that know Xactimate, it's called a Customer No Totals Report. It's kind of insidious. Is that the right word? To call it a Customer No Totals Report, because what it is, it's a scope report out of Xactimate that has no dollar figures attached to it. So you're hiding what you're charging, and you're making it difficult for your client to understand what you're billing for. It's wrong. We need more transparency, and that's what it's about. I will practice incredible transparency. Rule number 3, I do not believe in competition. This goes to the core of everything that we are. When I was working with ServiceMaster in Scottsdale, Arizona, the hardest people to get help from were other ServiceMasters in the Phoenix area. It's backwards. It's wrong. But a competition mindset is a scarcity mindset. I don't believe in scarcity. I believe in abundance. I believe if I'm going to go get something, I don't have to take it away from somebody else. I can create it. I can create value on my own without detracting from somebody else. the insurance industry as a whole is inherently a zero-sum game. I don't believe in zero-sum games because there's no real winners in zero-sum games because so that's what I do not believe in competition. I don't, and neither should we. The restoration companies in my market are a part of my community. I will be an active member of the restoration community. It is our unbreakable unity that will create the change that we strive for. That is probably one of the most powerful rules or agreements and the hardest one for people to wrap their heads around, but it's the most important one. Last one, rule number 4, I am willing to walk away from any project, client, or contract that's not compatible with my values or stated mission. No relationship is worth taking part in if it requires losing money, sleep, or my humanity. How do I stop screen? Stop showing screen. There we go. Now we're back, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So how many times do we feel like we have to take on a project, or if we don't do this thing, the adjuster's never going to call us again? And the bottom line is we get to choose our clients, whether we want to recognize that or not. We get to choose who we work for. And if we don't actively choose who we want to work for, we're going to end up working for assholes. Sorry if I can't cuss on this show. I don't know. But you're going to get the client that you deserve, not the client you want, unless you actively go get the client that you want. So that's in a nutshell. There's nothing really revolutionary in this list of four agreements. But you put them together as a mindset, and then you get a movement of people that agree that this is the right mindset. That's when you start shifting a needle. That's where you start moving things.
Yeah, and as I observed this, you're actually operating at 2 levels. You're operating at the level today. I saw this on the Facebook page the other day. It's about protecting our profitability and our businesses today.
Yes.
And then preparing for the changes that we're not sure exactly what they're going to be, but we know they're going to be highly disruptive in the future.
Precisely.
Are there particular changes that are coming down the pike that you are especially concerned about?
Well, the lemonade model is very, very scary because for everything we read about them, we don't know how they're actually handling repairs. We don't know what they're looking at, right? We're pretty sure it's not going to be a TPA solution. This book and this graphic that I have up pretty much shows the reason the TPA system doesn't work. And well, the reasons, there's several. And that's what we have with HMOs. The medical healthcare, quote healthcare industry is suffering from very similar problems, and we've got ourselves locked into these systems that don't really provide the value that they should. Talking about the maturity of the market, and this is where the blue shifts happen. This is where innovation is supposed to happen. That's why this is happening right now. This what happens in every industry ever. Once it gets mature, innovation happens. And then the people that don't innovate die. They just go away. Let me start showing screen. So that can you see this now? Mm-hmm. My whole screen. This is a graphic from page one of these pages in this book in the first chapter. So on the left-hand side is the existing value network for healthcare, but you could just as easily put in P&C. It fits really well. It's very linear. You've got the insurance company stuck right in the middle, and it's up or down. Well, the reality is we're all gonna have to specialize. We're all going to have to look who's in the middle of this one on the right is the patients. The patients are in the middle, not the insurance company. Mm-hmm. So everything we do as the Restoration 2.0 summits, where everything we're doing is changing the mindset of we need to be client centric. We need to be concentrating on the insured and their property. Everything else is secondary or tertiary. There is no more important thing than marketing to concentrating on and servicing that client, because the future is them. It's mass customization of services. It's incredible niche services that all play in a different in an ecosystem that is all controlled by AI. Right now, I mean, what's the most common setup for a restoration contractor? They're huge. They do mitigation. They do in-house soft goods, right? They do house cleaning. They do repairs. They do roofing. They're just these big things, because what we were told by the TPAs is you have to be all things to us. And the reason that is, by the way, if you're not the client, you're the product. We are the product that the TPAs sell to the carriers. They wanted to sell a product that looked a certain way, and we had to conform to the boundaries of that product.
Right.
Well, that product doesn't have a place in the next era of P&C property claims. It doesn't. That product is antiquated product. It's bloated. It doesn't move fast. It's slow to change. We're going to have to be forced into more and more specialized services, and that's where I see a lot of like there's now you can go, okay, so specialized services, you can do Xactimate estimating through you can outsource that. You can outsource your mitigation equipment. You can have someone come in and set up equipment, rent it to you, and they'll monitor it and then take it down when the job's done. You don't have to have any big equipment to do large loss anymore, because there's specialists in that. CRD and other specialists in soft goods. I think they're going the wrong direction now. They're going into electronics, which is, I think, it's going to dilute their mission. I don't see that working long term, but we're going to have to become more and more specialized and find a way to go get the work.
Yeah, and they're, one of the things that I'm concerned about is I call it the Uberification of the industry. You've got companies obviously like Uber and Lyft, but you've also got companies like Dolly. So if you need to move, you buy a couch, you go on the app and get a couple of guys that are probably movers in their regular day job with a pickup truck. So I think one of the things that is encouraging is the unity of the group, because if we do not unify, then we are going to be at the mercy of whatever winds blow.
Right.
Yeah. And there's just so many possibilities for the change that we can't really anticipate, but it's always going to be better to be working together.
Right. There's a Verisk, is it Verisk or Vericlaim, using a company called We Go Look. Right. It's the Uberification of inspections now.
Right.
There's an app for that.
Yeah.
Do we think it's going to stop there? No, it's not going to stop there. There's going to be an app for everything, and AI is going to be behind the whole thing.
Right.
We've got to change. We've got to see that coming and change.
Yeah, and it could be that brave new world, that is so worrisome, because when there's an app for that, just like with Uber, the drivers are not controlling the pricing, and it's take it or leave it. So
pretty soon there's not going to be any drivers.
Well, yes, there we go. Absolutely. So yeah, there's lots of potential for dramatic disruptive change, and so good news is that people are coming together to try and face that together.
Absolutely.
So I can probably put words in your mouth on this one, but your greatest hope for the rebel movement, of course, is to be that unified force that you've been describing to meet these changes. And if you want to say more about that, go ahead. But I'm also curious to know what your greatest fear is.
My greatest fear is that 5 years from now, it's gone. It fizzles out. I lose heart, or I get hit by a bus and no one steps up to continue and carry the torch. Or we don't do a good enough job of protecting the integrity of the group. Right now, that's a big concern for us. We don't want anyone in the group, seriously, who can't not agree to these four things.
Right.
And does not live that in their business, in their personal and business life. And it won't take very many people to start flying a rebel flag, but not acting like a rebel, not acting with integrity. And that's the biggest danger is they'll just take all credibility away, and then we'll lose our voice. And that's what my biggest concern is.
that brings me to something that I was going to address a little bit later, but I think this is the perfect time to jump into it now. So, the rebel approach to getting paid, I think you talk about it as stay in your lane.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your job as a restorer to negotiate with the adjuster. We went down the wrong road a long time ago in this industry when we decided that negotiating with the adjuster was something we should do.
Yeah, we gave up our leverage. We gave up all our leverage. Yeah.
So there are people that say, and these tend to be folks that are more traditional in their approach, that that approach, which is my price is my price, and if you don't want to pay it, that's fine. I'll collect from the customer and I'll file a lien if I need to. They say that this is ruining restorers' relationships with adjusters and the claims community, or maybe they're worried that they're going to get blacklisted if they do that. So what's your response to that?
My response is, when was the last time you had an adjuster call you with a job? If you got an adjuster,
for a lot of restorers, that's true.
If you got that job from that adjuster, then you might need to approach it differently. But that doesn't happen anymore. It really doesn't. The adjusters are not calling with this job. They're not doling these things out. Guess what? We're all on a blacklist. There is no relationship to save. It's nothing personal against adjusters. Don't get me wrong. I don't want any. I know you, Tim, you know me, but all y'all out there, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-adjuster. I'm not even really anti-carrier. I'm anti the system that forces us all to treat each other like we're not humans. And that's where adjusters are at. They have these rules that they have to abide by. And it's dehumanizing to everyone on the receiving end. And it's not their fault, but we also don't have to play that game. We can take our ball and go home. We can play the game differently. And there are very successful stories of restoration guys that said, you know what, I know who my client is. I'm going to go service that client. Allied Restoration out of Orange County or LA, perfect example. They said, you know what, we want to service high net worth client individuals. We are going to provide Nordstrom level service, and we're going to charge accordingly. They don't have a room full of people on the phone having email and phone wars with adjusters trying to get collections, because their clients are self-funding these things. And guess what their clients are doing? Their clients are going, hey, Chubb, hey, high-end insurance company, here's what it cost me. I expect a check next week. Mm-hmm. And the insurance companies are paying it because they're playing a different game. They're not putting themselves, we put ourselves in this box. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the video where I described the restoration industry as a pot of boiling frogs. 20 years ago, we got in the swimming pool, and the water was great, but the temperature's been dialed up incrementally, slowly over the last few years, and we woke up realizing the water is boiling. We're dying. We don't know how we got here. Well, we got here one little step at a time. Yeah. And there's no one little step of a time out of this. It's a big step. It's a complete transition.
So, when I read the Facebook page, it looks like a lot of restorers are having good success with this approach.
Yes.
And any horror stories where things have gone horribly wrong, where the adjuster says, see you in court, and now somebody's holding, six-figure AR that may take them under?
That problem existed prior, right? If that was a problem, it existed prior to this. Right. So, are there situations where people have to go to court? Yes, and there always have been. When the reality is, though, it's a big game of chicken, because they don't want to go to court any more than we want to go to court. And there's a lot of posturing and chest puffing that goes on right up to the point where they swerve, right? Because there's a point, if you just say no and no and no and no, they're out of options. But the problem is we go, no, you're going to pay it. No, you're going to pay it. Okay, fine. It's gotten too
Right.
painful. It's been 60 days. I can't afford this anymore. Fine, I'm going to cave. I'm going to come back to the table. I'm going to negotiate this thing. Well, that negotiation sets the tone for the rest of your relationship with that person for the rest of
Yep.
your career.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I also think, and we haven't really touched on this, a couple things that are critical. Your documentation must be absolutely clean. That goes to the second rule,
It
right?
needs to be industry leading. It needs to be better than average, not average. It needs to be the
Right.
best documentation ever. That's
Right.
the only way. Yes,
Right. If it's not in writing, as far as the insurance company is concerned, and I think the court didn't happen.
exactly right.
So you're going to be left out on a limb. The other thing is your contracts. If you're working on a work authorization, you cannot pull this off. You need
No.
a real contract that is going to support you in court.
Yeah.
And without that, it's going to be very, very tough.
Newsflash. We're contractors. Go figure.
It's in our
Oh,
name.
huh. Wow. How does that work? And for the longest time, hey, first 15 years of my career, we're not serious contractors. We're just silly paper pusher guys. And the man in the van with a fan could do
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
but that's no longer the case. We need to
And
act like big boys, put our big boy and girl pants on,
yeah,
and become contractors in a legitimate sense.
yeah. And I think, I don't know if you have a favorite or not, but Ed Cross, who's a well-known restoration attorney, his contract package I think is less than $1,000, and
Money well spent.
for that, extraordinarily well spent. So for restorers that have integrity and that are going to do the job right and expect to get paid in order to make a reasonable profit, which they absolutely deserve, this is a phenomenal approach to the market. But every industry has bad apples,
Mm-hmm.
and people that lack integrity, they don't follow the four agreements. They're just looking for a better way to, I don't know how else to say it, but cheat the insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to be able to deal with that?
It's going to be. We have a group of administrators. We have a group of leaders. They don't have official titles, but they are the leaders. They're part of the admin group. There's 14 or 15 of us, and we take that very seriously. If you are doing something, this is our, for lack of a better term, this is our code of ethics. And if you're not abiding by the code of ethics, and guess what? In this world of internet and social media and Google, we're going to find out. You're not going to be in a group anymore. You're going to be gone. You do not have our permission to fly our flag if you're going to rub it in the dirt and step on it. That's our number one concern. We have to be so much better than everything else out there. And that goes to the future, the future of the blockchain and verified customer reviews and things like that. The Googles and the AIs of the world are going to know whether or not you're a good businessman or woman, because they're going to be able to see 5 years ago that you had 5 customers sue you because X, Y, and Z. That's going to come out. You can't just there's right now you burn your name, you just close down and open another LLC, right, and get another bond. That's not going to be possible anymore. And we're going to know, we're going to watch, we're going to see you, and you're going to be gone. You're just not welcome at the party because there's no room for that.
This is so critical. I mean, if you look at any of the claims publications like Claims Magazine, for example, one of their favorite features is the fraudsters, right?
Yeah.
And these guys, I mean, guys and gals, they exist obviously, and they are the ones that ruin it for everybody. They are fundamentally the crooks, and they are in fact crooks that destroy. There's a certain logic to an insurance company looking at everybody like they're a thief, whether you're a policyholder or a contractor, because there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of all claims are considered to be fraudulent.
Or inflated in some way. Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot, and so you can kind of appreciate that. So it's good to know that there's a mechanism in place, because that's another thing that can really damage the group. Is I don't know any other way to say it, but the scumbags that are trying to work the system sort of under the false flag of being a rebel.
Yeah. And we deal with that once or twice a week in the group. Someone says,
Okay.
um, the two invoice game that came up last week.
Oh,
Someone
yeah.
said, well, I do this with my subcontractor. I have this type of agreement. And we came down very swiftly and said, you know what? There's people in federal prison for doing what you're suggesting you're going to do. I don't think you should go down that road.
Yep, sitting in prison in Colorado right now.
Exactly right.
And there's something interesting about that without getting into any of the details of that story. This was a situation where a major insurance company decided to squash somebody,
Yes,
and
exactly.
they squashed. I mean, it was a body slam, WWE style, and you think about literally sitting in a whatever it is now, 6x8 cell for years on end. Yeah, you've got to be really, really careful, and you got to play it clean.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you just brought up the webinar, and there's a number of resources. I've talked about the Facebook page, which is really easy to find. You have to join it if you're not already a member of it. But you talked about a webinar. Is that a weekly webinar?
We got a weekly webinar that we tie into the Facebook page. So that's free to all members to show up and get your burning questions answered, or just sit around and listen to everyone else talk about their horror stories or their victories, as it were. We have a website now. It's not really fleshed out yet, but we're going to start putting all our things like sample contracts, sample estimates, suggested reading type stuff. All the articles that I've written are going to be on that website. It's going to be linked to all the video content that we can find. We're thinking really hard about turning the podcast back on. I have 13 episodes of a podcast at the Claim.Clinic that I just ran out of steam, and I stopped doing. But now I think we've got more steam. I think we could get a listenership and provide value back, and it all of it's just about giving. We don't know what the ask is yet. I don't know what I'm going to ask of the membership. There will come a time where I'm going to ask, hey, I need you all to do this. You need to do this. But until that point, I just want to make everyone better. A rising tide floats all boats. The title of our summit in May is Changing Tides. The tides are changing, just like weather, just like the climates.
Right. Well, talk about that a little bit. I want to make sure that people know what that's all about.
Well, we had our first one. Just came out of we decided last January, you know what, we should get together in the same room and talk about these things. And we had 50 people show up in Bend, Oregon, because I didn't want to travel. So I said, you got to come to me. And it was just amazing how many people flew from a long ways away to a little tiny town. Bend is not an easy place to get to. We don't even have an airport. Redmond has an airport, but that's 30 miles north. Anyway, we came together and we said, what is this? First off, what is this group? Why are we here? And it was really good just to reach across the aisle, reach across the table and say, these people, they're experiencing the same pain I am. They've been doing the same thing. They've been fighting the same fights that I've been fighting. And so we talked about the future, what that looks like. And we also talked about the present, because as you alluded to earlier, if we don't survive, our businesses don't survive the next 5 years, what the next 5 to 10 look like is irrelevant. So there are some things that we can do that are very, very powerful that will help us survive. And one of them is bringing back overhead and profit. I mean, I don't know when we gave that away, but I'm going to punch whoever gave it away first in the mouth. But the other thing we can do is pricing feedback in Xactimate. As long as Xactimate is the standard, which it is now, but I don't see it being a standard 10 years from now. I don't think Xactimate exists in its current form, at least. But we had this tool at our disposal, but we never used it. Pricing has stagnated, and we're all pointing the finger at, the carriers or the adjuster or the TPA. No, it was us. It's our program. The tools are at our disposal. We just didn't use them. We didn't educate ourselves on it. So a big initiative this year and going into next year is getting together in local rebel groups on a regional or local level and learning how to do pricing feedback, learning how to put your own business's costs into the system so it spits out the right number. So you're not losing money on every job and trying to make it up on volume.
Yeah.
So yeah, survival. I think the biggest part, and in May, this summit's going to be profound. I believe we're going to sell out of 250 tickets. There's not going to be enough. I don't think there's going to be enough tickets for people to want to come. But we're going to put people into their little units, accountability groups, as they leave. This is your group of fellow rebels that you're going to hold each other accountable on these things. You're going to put together a marketing plan for your business, and not an old donut dropper marketing plan. You're going to put together a real marketing plan. And I hope BDA can help with some of that implementation of it. Here's what it takes to be a real contractor. These are the things you're going to put in place in your business to help you, the systems you're going to help you survive. And we're going to have the people that come to the summit and walk away from the summit, their businesses are going to grow this year just by exposure to these ideas and these concepts. And then follow up of accountability of, you learned it, now you're going to implement it. I expect to see pricing feedback play very large this year. And look at I don't know if anyone out there has heard of Ben Jessison from JRCC out of Moses Lake, Washington, but his labor pricing over the last year has increased $20 an hour on average for things like drywall, paint, water mitigation labor. That doesn't happen accidentally. That doesn't happen because of a fluke. Xactimate didn't go out there and say, we're going to raise the prices. He did actively did legitimate pricing feedback in Xactimate and guess who else that helps? Everyone in the Moses Lake, Washington, Yakima area gets the benefit of Ben Justin's hard work. And he did it in less than a year. So if we do that as a concerted effort, we do that as an industry, that alone would just change the landscape, because then we're having a different conversation. We're not coming at this thing and please sir, may I have another, man, I'm just desperate for this next job because I didn't quite make enough on the next job or last job.
Right.
When profit margins come back to where they need to be, it changes your mindset as a business owner and an operator, and you do different things, which is nice. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one, and I've actually been from Just Right has been down to see one of my clients who gathered up his local competitors, if you will, and talked about how to do the uploading. In fact, we have a question. If you do training on how to put your prices into the pricing database, it's actually so simple, but is there a resource somewhere, Andy, that you're aware of where somebody can go see?
Ben does do that, and we'll see if we can link that up. I don't do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to videotape it, but I'm not qualified to do a classroom on it as it were, but that will be on the Facebook page as soon as I do that. Actually, Actionable Insights put together a video on that. Actionableinsights.org, I believe. I got something from them over here.
Okay. All right. So
Actionableinsights.org did a video on pricing feedback. So that'd be a good one to go search out.
Okay. There's a number of comments here, and some of them make me laugh.
Let's go into it. Let's make it happen.
Now we're just about out of our official hour, so Andy has agreed to stay a little bit, and we can address some of these. So anybody that wants to hang with us for the next few minutes, we will do that. Here's a couple of quick ones. Somebody asked about the name of the lawyer. Ed Cross is the attorney. I don't know what his website is, but if you look, Google Ed Cross restoration lawyer, you should be able to find his website.
Google it.
Okay, and so here's one. I'm going to give you one that's a little bit tough, Andy.
All right.
It says, here we go.
I like tough.
Okay, here we go. Some of the ideas are quite naive. If you have a large project and try to play chicken, some GA will make sure you go to court. One of the biggest issues is providing subcontractor documentation. At no time, caps, should you show any third-party documentation. This reinforces all you deserve is the 10 and 10.
Well, I can see that point of view. Does Skanska hide their subcontract? Does Anderson Construction hide their subcontract numbers? They're doing millions and millions of dollars, $100 million projects,
Mhm.
and they're showing everything because it all has to be shown. What makes us so cool and exclusive? Are we really special snowflakes that we get to be the exception to the general contractor rule?
Mhm.
Um, if someone's going to force you to go to court, they're going to force you to go to court. I don't believe it's naive at all. I just think it's a different way of doing business.
Well, and that speaks to really, I mean, everything is a business decision. If you own a business, you're going to make business decisions, and obviously, sometimes you're not going to agree with the things that the rebels say, and that's your prerogative, and sometimes you do. Everybody has to do their own due diligence and then make their own decisions.
Well, if you're using Xactimate to do your estimating, I don't see why you would need to show your sub costs. Because you're agreeing to use the program that they're already using, so you're coming to that commonality of language of this is our settlement tool and we're going to abide by it. You can make better margins sometimes. Okay, usually on a larger project, you can make better margins using Xactimate line items, and then going out and getting a sub to do it for less than that. That's a legitimate way of doing business. But I think the bigger the job gets, the more likely they're going to be to say, hey, I need to see that cost because we're talking about millions of dollars here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've seen it go several different ways. I've done consulting jobs where I've done $25 million apartment complex rebuilds in Xactimate. There's no sub bids a part of that. And I was the consultant. I was the hired gun from the carrier, and we use Xactimate. So I think it's pertinent. You agree? What language you're going to use right up front? What's our basis here? And if someone comes in after the fact and says, well, no, you're not going to use Xactimate, you're going to use 10 and 10 pricing. Well, who are they? Are they on your contract? Did they sign a contract your contract and your agreements with your client? And ultimately, if a carrier wants to play games with the claim, they're going to have to talk to your client, not you.
Right.
That goes back to staying in your lane.
And I think, too, when you're talking large loss, it's a different animal.
Sure is.
And the level of sophistication needed to deal with that third-party consultant that comes in and is, getting ready to tear you to pieces. And I've had clients recount these stories to me. When you're prepared and you know what you're talking about and you've got your documentation,
it's easy
but
peasy.
It is clearly a game that is not for lightweights. I mean,
No.
You got to know what you're doing. You got to have your ducks in a row. And that's a very different situation than, typical, residential restoration projects.
There's no fake it till you make it, for sure.
Yeah.
And I see that as an emerging industry. Mm-hmm. We have the carriers, construction consultants, but who's on the other side? I think there's the market gap there that will be filled with folks like me and others. Right. The RTPE program from RIA is another example, but there needs to be a voice on the insured side, a construction consultant on the insured side, and big property owners and big businesses have them. They're in-house risk managers, is what they are. But I see that as an emergent thing. We're going to start having battles of consultants here before too long. And I think it's good you brought that up, Tim. Is if this is your first or second or third loss, large loss, or if this loss equals last year's revenue for your company, you may be out of your depth, and you may need to call in some help.
Yeah, I say that all the time. That's the time when you pay the bucks, whatever it is, and you get somebody on a plane that's on your side.
Get them on a plane. Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Blaine Perry says, what would you say is the most important mission at hand right now?
Most important mission. I think growth. Growth and unity. We need to grow the group. I think 1,400 people is good. I think 5,000 is better. But that growth needs to come with a unity of purpose. So intentional growth is a number one concern for me. Blaine actually happens to be one of the admin in the Facebook group. So good for you, Blaine. You're watching. And we've got a map. Going to the marketing side of life, we've got a Google map, an interactive Google map with all the registered rebels on it. If that had 5,000 different addresses on it, that becomes a very, very powerful tool for SEO and everything else.
I'll tell you what, and when it comes to the insurance industry, dots on the map is incredibly important. And the more dots you have, the more power you have in a lot of different directions. I've worked for some small TPAs in the past, and that's always a huge stumbling block. Okay. Somebody asked if it'd be possible to get a list of the books you talked about. Maybe you could put that on the Facebook page. Let's see here.
And this tribe of mentors is talking about competition. Terry Crews. I did it. This is wow. That's all I gotta say. Let's look at it. It's like a foot thick. It's incredible. Really good. Just mindset. Yeah, marketing and business acumen, and nothing means anything if you have the wrong mindset.
True. Okay. Somebody criticized our understanding about what happened in Colorado. As I said, I didn't want to get into the details.
I'm not an expert on that one. I just know the 30,000 foot level of the. It may not have been wrong. I'll touch on that a little bit.
Okay.
When that happened, before that happened, we were all doing it. It was accepted business practice. When that article came out, or when that verdict came down, thousands of contractors called everyone into the main office in the conference room and said, "Oh shit, we got to stop doing this." I'm not going to go into what it was, but we all know what it was. We were all doing it because we wwere playing this game. And that's where I came to professionally 10 years ago, probably. I realized this is just a game. So we're moving some pieces around the board, and I'm going to get better at moving these pieces than you, and playing chess. And well, the chess game went too far. And I think you're exactly right, Tim. Someone wanted to make an example out of this guy, and they did in a no nonsense type way, and it sucks for him. But if we hadn't lost sight of, so we were playing the game instead of servicing our clients, and we lost sight of it. We lost sight of our why. We lost sight of why we do what we do. I mean, I drive a white truck with a sheriff's badge on the side. That tells you I like to get on my white horse and go save the day.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. We like to go into people's houses that are having the worst day of their life and try to make it a little bit better and save them. We are service providers. We love that. That's why we do it. When we lose sight of that, we lose sight of our why. We start playing these stupid games. That's when we get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably all of the questions that
are fit for family viewing.
So what I'd like to do is just I promised that I would show one quick offer.
Yes.
So we didn't get a chance to get to this, but if you're not going to go the TPA route as the industry is going that way, then you have to be able to drive the growth of your own business. And the key to that, in my opinion, the starting point is cutting edge marketing strategy. And it just so happens that over the last year, I did 4 one-hour webinars on marketing strategy for restoration contractors. And to my knowledge, it's probably the most comprehensive discussion of marketing strategy for our industry anywhere. It's not publicly available, but just as a thank you for everybody that came to this webinar, I'm offering it for free just to say thanks for being here. Just email me, tim@gobda.com, and put in the subject line strategy webinars, and we'll send you a link to how to get to them. Some of you might think, oh my gosh, 4 hours on marketing strategy, but we kind of did it as a workshop that you could work along with. So given that this is the first of the year and probably a little bit late for planning strategy, but it's never too late to look at strategy, I wanted to make that offer to everybody. So I very much want to thank you, Andy, for taking out so much time. Again, hey, if you guys need estimating, think of claims delegates so you can get expert support and help. Well worth it.
Perfect.
And very much appreciate everybody that joined us today.
Thanks, Tim. It was a pleasure as always. I look forward to talking about getting you to Nashville this year.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, everybody.